The crystal chandeliers of the Harbor View Country Club cast perfect lighting across the rehearsal dinner, the kind of lighting my sister Victoria had probably spent weeks planning. Everything about tonight was designed to be flawless. Everything except me, apparently. Sophia, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about tomorrow. Mom's voice carried that particular tone she reserved for delivering bad news she didn't actually feel bad about. She stood up from her seat at the head table, where she'd been holding court with Aunt Susan and Victoria's future mother-in-law, Patricia Ashford. I set down my water glass and waited. I'd learned a long time ago that protesting only made things worse. The photographer is incredibly expensive, Mom continued, loud enough that conversations at nearby tables stopped. And Victoria has very specific ideas about her wedding aesthetic. Very cohesive. Victoria beamed from her seat next to her fiancé, Brandon. She looked stunning as always in a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair cascaded in perfect waves, her makeup was flawless, and her engagement ring caught the light with every gesture. What Mom is trying to say, Victoria interjected with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes, is that the photos need to look really polished. Professional. You understand, right? I'm not sure I do, I said quietly, though I understood perfectly. Aunt Susan leaned forward, her wine glass tilted at a dangerous angle. Oh honey, you know we love you. But you're more of a natural beauty type. Not really the model type like Victoria. The wedding photos need to be magazine quality. So stay out of the main family photos, Mom said firmly. Maybe stand in the very back for the large group shots. We don't want any distractions. The table had gone completely silent now. 23 people watching me get told I was too ugly for my own sister's wedding photos. I've already discussed it with the photographer, Victoria added, examining her manicured nails. He'll make sure to position everyone strategically. You can be in a few, just not the important ones. Not the ones we're framing or putting in the album. Brandon shifted uncomfortably beside her but said nothing. My brother-in-law had always been kind to me in private but never quite brave enough to contradict his fiancée in public. The bridesmaids are all so gorgeous, Patricia Ashford chimed in, smiling at the 6 women seated at a nearby table. Victoria chose such beautiful girls. It's important that everyone in the photos complements each other, you know? I looked at Victoria's bridesmaids. They were indeed stunning. Each one could have walked off a magazine cover. Which made sense considering they had. Of course, I said, keeping my voice even. Whatever you think is best. Don't be like that, Victoria sighed. It's not personal. It's just that you never really took care of yourself. I mean, when was the last time you went to a salon? Or wore makeup? You're always in those baggy clothes and your hair. She made a vague gesture at my simple ponytail. You could try harder, Mom added. Look at Victoria. She works at it. She puts in the effort. That's why she's marrying into the Ashford family. That's why she has such beautiful friends. Success takes work, Sophia. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I glanced at the screen, asterisk en route. 5 minutes. Jennifer asterisk. I do work, I said calmly. Every day. That little fashion thing you do doesn't count, Aunt Susan waved her hand dismissively. What is it, retail? Victoria said you work in a clothing store or something. Something like that. See, that's the problem right there, Mom said, warming to her subject. No ambition. Victoria is a marketing director at a Fortune 500 company. She drives a Mercedes. She has a career. You just sell clothes. Victoria's bridesmaid Natasha, a tall, striking woman with cheekbones that could cut glass, caught my eye from across the room. She looked down at her phone, then back at me, raising one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Speaking of your bridesmaids, I said to Victoria, they're lovely. Where did you find them? Oh, through my modeling connections, Victoria said airily, though I knew for a fact my sister had never modeled professionally in her life. I know people in the industry. These girls are all represented by Holland Elite Agency, only the best agency in the country. They're doing me a huge favor being here. Holland Elite, I repeated. That's a great agency. The best, Patricia agreed. My friend's daughter tried to get signed there but wasn't pretty enough. They only take exceptional talent. Must be expensive to book them for a wedding, I observed. Oh, they're not here as models, Victoria laughed. They're my friends. Well, acquaintances. But they agreed to be bridesmaids because they liked my vision for the wedding. They said it would make great content for their social media. Natasha's lips twitched, but she kept her expression neutral. How generous of them, I said. My phone buzzed again, pulling up now. The country club's main doors opened and my assistant Jennifer walked in, followed by 10 of the most photographed women in the world. They didn't just walk, they commanded space. Every head in the restaurant turned. Jennifer, impeccable in a tailored black suit, scanned the room until her eyes found mine. She strode directly to our table, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Behind her, the models moved like a coordinated unit. Professional, polished, powerful. Miss Holland, Jennifer said, loud enough that her voice carried across the suddenly silent room. I apologize for the interruption, but Vogue's team is ready for your interview. They're set up in the private room upstairs. They specifically wanted to photograph you with your top models for the cover story about your agency. Mom's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Victoria's face went white. They insisted on featuring Natasha, Sienna, and Zara in the spread, Jennifer continued, gesturing to 3 of the women standing behind her. Since they're your most successful signings this year. Combined, they've earned the agency $47 million. Wait, Aunt Susan said faintly. Your agency? Jennifer finally seemed to notice the family table. Oh, I'm sorry, am I interrupting a family dinner? Miss Holland, I can tell Vogue to wait if you need more time. Miss Holland. Mom repeated, her voice strangled. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my simple black dress. It's fine, Jennifer. We were just finishing up. I turned to Victoria, who was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. I'm sorry to cut out early, but you know how Vogue is. Very demanding. You. Victoria's voice failed. She looked at her bridesmaids' table where all 6 women were now standing. You work for Holland Elite. Not exactly, I said. Natasha stepped forward, a smile playing at her lips. We work for her. Ms. Holland founded the agency 8 years ago. She represents all of us. That's impossible, Patricia Ashford said sharply. Holland Elite is one of the most successful modeling agencies in the world. They represent supermodels. They book for New York Fashion Week, Paris, Milan. All of which I attend regularly, I confirmed. Twice a year every year. The September shows are particularly exhausting. Sienna, a stunning redhead who'd graced the cover of 17 magazines in the past year alone, stepped forward. Miss Holland discovered me when I was 17. I was working at a coffee shop in Ohio. She flew out personally to meet with me and my parents. Changed my entire life. She changed all our lives, Zara added. She was the youngest, barely 22, and already one of the most sought-after faces in fashion. Holland Elite isn't just an agency. It's a family. Ms. Holland makes sure we're protected, fairly compensated, and actually treated like human beings. That's why we're the top agency in the industry. Victoria found her voice. But you said you worked in fashion. You said it was just a job. You never said you owned. She couldn't even finish the sentence. You never asked, I said simply. You assumed I worked retail. I let you. Why would you let us think? Mom started. Because it was easier than explaining, I interrupted. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you dismissed it. That fashion thing. Selling clothes. After a while, I stopped correcting you. Brandon spoke for the first time, his voice awed. Holland Elite. I read about you in Forbes. Your worth. The article said your agency's valuation is over $800 million. The valuation is actually $1.2 billion as of last quarter, Jennifer corrected politely. We just closed a deal with a major luxury brand for exclusive representation. And Susan made a choking sound. Victoria, Natasha said, her voice gentle but firm, I need to tell you something. We're not here as your bridesmaids because we're your friends. We're here because Miss Holland asked us to be. Victoria's champagne complexion went gray. What? 3 months ago, you contacted Holland Elite requesting models for your wedding, I explained. You wanted beautiful bridesmaids who would make your photos look better. Our booking agent quoted you our standard rate, $50,000 per model for a full weekend plus expenses. You said you couldn't afford it but asked if we had any models who might want to be in a society wedding for exposure. Victoria's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. I saw the request, I continued. I saw it was for my sister's wedding. So I asked 6 of my models if they'd be willing to volunteer their time as a favor to me. They agreed because I've always been good to them. Because that's what family does for each other. Real family, not just blood. You manipulated me, Victoria whispered. I helped you, I corrected. You wanted beautiful bridesmaids. You got the 6 most in-demand models in the country for free. Your wedding photos will be stunning. You'll probably be in every society magazine in the state. Because that's what happens when you have Holland elite models in your wedding party. Mom finally found her voice. Why didn't you tell us? Because you didn't want to know, I said, and I was surprised by how calm I sounded. How peaceful. You wanted me to be the failure. The plain sister. The retail worker who made Victoria look better by comparison. I let you have that because it didn't matter. My success has never been about proving anything to you. The rehearsal photos, Patricia Ashford said suddenly, looking at her phone. The photographer just posted a preview on social media. They've already got 50,000 likes. People are asking who the models are. She looked up at Victoria. Your wedding is going to be viral. Because of my bridesmaids, Victoria said hollowly. Because of Sophia's models. Because of your sister's generosity, Brandon said quietly. He looked at me with something like respect. She gave you the wedding of your dreams. And I told her she was too ugly for the photos, Victoria whispered. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer checked her watch. Miss Holland, Vogue is waiting. They have a tight schedule. Of course. I picked up my clutch and turned to leave, then paused. Victoria, your bridesmaids have a 5 a.m. call time for hair and makeup. They're professionals, they'll be ready. Try to get some sleep. I looked at my mother. Mom, you should know that the photographer you hired is actually on Holland Elite's preferred vendor list. He shot 17 of our campaigns. When he found out the bride was my sister, he upgraded your package for free. The photos will be beautiful. Sophia, wait. Mom stood up, reaching for me. We'll talk tomorrow, I said. Tonight I have a Vogue interview about building an empire. They're calling it, The Woman Who Changed the Face of Fashion. It's a 12-page spread. I walked toward the doors, Jennifer and my models flanking me like a well-dressed army. Behind me I heard my family's stunned silence. Just before I stepped outside, Natasha turned back to the room. For the record, she called out, her voice carrying across the entire restaurant. Miss Holland is the most beautiful woman I know. She taught me that beauty isn't about fitting into someone else's vision. It's about defining your own. That's why we all love her. That's why she's built something none of her critics ever could. The doors closed behind us, muffling the eruption of conversation that followed. Outside, a black SUV waited along with a town car for the models. Jennifer pulled open the SUV door for me. That was dramatic, she observed with a slight smile. That was necessary, I corrected, sliding into the back seat. My phone started buzzing incessantly, texts and calls from family members. I silenced it. Vogue is actually upstairs, right? I asked. Absolutely. Annie Leibovitz herself is shooting. She cleared her entire schedule when she heard you'd finally agreed to an interview. Said it was about time the woman behind the empire stepped out of the shadows. I leaned back against the leather seat. Let's give them a good show then. The Vogue shoot took 3 hours. Annie wanted shots of me in my element. On the phone negotiating deals, reviewing model portfolios, working at my laptop in my small corner office that overlooked the city. She wanted to capture the working reality, not some glamorous fantasy. You're not what people expect, Annie said, reviewing the shots on her camera. Most agency owners are out front, taking credit, making themselves the star. You built an empire and stayed invisible. I preferred it that way, I said. The models should be the stars. That's the whole point. Until tonight, she observed shrewdly. What changed? I thought about my mother's announcement. About being told I'd ruin the photos. About years of quiet dismissal and casual cruelty disguised as family concern. I got tired of making myself small to make others comfortable, I said finally. Annie smiled. Good. That's the quote I'm using for the headline. It was nearly midnight when I finally made it back to my apartment. A penthouse in the financial district with views of the harbor. The space was modern and minimalist, decorated with photographs from fashion shoots I'd art directed over the years. I poured myself a glass of wine and scrolled through the messages I'd been ignoring. Mom, 47 messages. Finito. Why didn't you tell us? I can't believe you let us think. Your father is very upset. Call me immediately. Victoria, 63 messages. I'm so sorry. Please answer. I didn't know. I was horrible to you. The bridesmaids won't talk to me. Please don't ruin my wedding. Dad, 3 messages. Your mother told me what happened. I always knew you were smart. We should have dinner soon. I almost laughed at that last one. Dad had barely spoken to me in 3 years, but now that I was successful, he wanted dinner. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost declined, then recognized the area code. It was local. Hello. Miss Holland? This is Patricia Ashford. Brandon's mother. I braced myself. Mrs. Ashford. I owe you an apology, she said simply. I participated in some very unkind conversation tonight. I made assumptions about you based on appearance and gossip. That was wrong. I sat down surprised. Thank you. I also wanted you to know that I've been a silent investor in several fashion ventures over the years. I have some capital I've been looking to place in the right company. Would you be interested in discussing an investment in Holland Elite? I think there could be significant growth potential. That's unexpected. Good business is good business, she said pragmatically. And from what I saw tonight, you run an exceptional operation. Those models respect you. That's rare in this industry. I'd be happy to set up a meeting, I said carefully. Have your people contact my CFO. Excellent. And Miss Holland? I hope you'll still come to the wedding tomorrow. Despite tonight's disaster, your family. My son would be devastated if you weren't there. After she hung up, I stared at my phone in disbelief. In the span of 4 hours, I'd gone from being too ugly for photos to having a potential 8-figure investor. At 2 a.m. there was a knock at my door. I checked the security camera and saw Victoria standing in the hallway, still in her rehearsal dinner dress, mascara streaked down her face. I buzzed her up. I'm so sorry, she said the moment I opened the door. Sophia, I'm so incredibly sorry. I stepped aside to let her in. She walked to my windows, staring out at the city lights. I've been jealous of you my whole life, she said finally. Did you know that? That doesn't make sense. You were always the pretty one. The successful one. Mom's favorite. Pretty, she laughed bitterly. Do you know what it's like to be valued only for how you look? To know that's all anyone sees? You were always the smart one. The creative one. The one who didn't need validation from others because you knew your own worth. Victoria. I built my whole identity around being beautiful, she continued. My job, my relationships, my self-worth. All of it based on being the pretty sister. And you just didn't care. You wore whatever you wanted. You never tried to compete with me. That made me feel even worse because it meant you didn't see me as competition. You were playing a completely different game. She turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. And now I find out you built an $1.2 billion company. You represent the most beautiful women in the world. You literally define beauty standards for the entire industry. And you did it while I was calling you a retail worker and telling you weren't pretty enough for my wedding photos. I didn't build Holland Elite to prove anything to you, I said gently. I built it because I saw how terribly models were treated. I wanted to create something better. That's what makes it worse, Victoria sobbed. You did it to help people. I can't even help myself without making someone else feel small. I got her a box of tissues and sat down beside her on my couch. Can I tell you something? I said. I almost quit 3 times in the first 2 years. I was 23 years old trying to compete with agencies that had been around for decades. I had no connections, no credibility, no funding. I failed constantly. But you succeeded. Eventually. After years of 16-hour days and rejection and barely being able to afford rent. And the whole time, every family dinner, every holiday, I had to listen to how I should give up my fashion thing and get a real job. Do you know how many times I wanted to tell you all to go to hell? Victoria wiped her eyes. Why didn't you? Because I didn't need you to believe in me. I believed in myself. That was enough. Your models love you, she said quietly. Natasha sent me a text. She said I didn't deserve you as a sister. She said you've been supporting women for years while I've been tearing them down. Natasha can be a bit dramatic. She's right though. Victoria looked at me. I don't deserve you. But I'm asking anyway, please don't abandon me tomorrow. Please still come to my wedding. Not as the invisible sister. As yourself. As the woman who built an empire. I want everyone to know who you are. Victoria. I've already talked to the photographer. You're in every photo. Front and center. And I'm having him take special shots of just us. The sisters. Because I want to remember this moment. The moment I finally saw you clearly. I studied my sister's face, still beautiful even with smudged makeup and red eyes. But for the first time I saw something else there too. Humility. Growth. Maybe even the beginning of wisdom. Okay, I said finally. I'll be there. Victoria hugged me fiercely. Thank you. And Sophia? I'm going to be better. I'm going to work on myself. Not the surface stuff, the real stuff. The stuff that matters. After she left, I stood at my window watching the sun start to rise over the harbor. My phone buzzed. A message from Jennifer. The Vogue piece is going live in 3 hours. Annie called it her favorite shooting years. Get some sleep, boss. Tomorrow's going to be intense. I smiled and headed to bed. Tomorrow I'd go to my sister's wedding. I'd take beautiful photos with my family. I'd watch Victoria marry Brandon in a ceremony that would be stunning partly because of my contribution. But more importantly, tomorrow I'd continue being exactly who I'd always been. Sophia Holland, founder and CEO of Holland Elite. The woman who changed the face of fashion not by being the most beautiful person in the room, but by helping others find their own beauty. And if my family finally saw me clearly, that was just a bonus. The real victory was that I'd never needed their validation in the first place.